Hello, everyone. First of all, thanks for joining us today. Let me introduce myself. As we present, I'm Rania. I work as an architect at Cubers Technologies, and I am a proud Women Techmaker ambassador. I manage the Women Techmakers Trivandrum chapter, and I'm also I'm remarkable facilitator. So today I'm here to talk about the essential factors that you need to consider while building a fault tolerant system. Let's start right away. We all are familiar with cloud services, right? And as developers, we run a number of services in the cloud. So there could be situations where on a weekend you are out for a movie, and while enjoying the movie, how do you feel receiving a call in between with a notification saying that the application you just deployed is down and the users can't access your application? So after receiving a call in between, you never know what could be waiting for you on the other end. Trust me, outage of services, frustrated clients, it could be customers could not access the service. Most of the times, it won't be a false alarm. So immediately, we need to set up a war room. Yes, you heard me right. You need to set up a war room. Struggling to understand the cause of the problems. Multiple services were simultaneously failing. Also, we would be trying to restart the services, and after a few seconds of hope, the problem might come back again, right? So, with every seconds of downtime, the pressure to restart the services would be building up. Some of you may have already experienced this, and you would agree with me when I say that these experiences are not at all pleasant. You know, uh, the problem could be a fault in one of the components of your system, could be triggering a chain reaction, and that could be causing the unavailability of the whole system. So we all knows this problem very well, and we even have a name for it. We immediately say that the system we just built is not fault tolerant. So how do you make these two activities compatible? The film we are watching over a weekend and the application we just built. Let's find out how to make this possible. So the fault tolerance is a property of the system that enables to continue to operate even when a fault occurs in one of its components, right? So the system continues to operate every under possible circumstances. For cloud services, maybe some kind of graceful degradation is usually acceptable. I mean to say, a small amount of graceful degradation is usually acceptable, but not always. So what exactly is a fault? A fault is nothing but a deviation from the normal state. A fault can have internal or external causes. Internal causes, for example, like server outage, and the external causes could be a sudden increase in the internal traffic. So in any case, these fault affects the internal state of the system only, and it's not observable from the outside. Only when the problem bubbles up to the surface, it is actually a failure, and it is then only it's visible from the outside. So what exactly is failure? Failure, there are two types of typical failure models, that is a total unavailability and a partial unavailability. So these failures could actually cause business to lose money. They can also damage your reputation, and for high profile clients or services, these failures can even become a trending topic, right? So clearly we want to avoid failures. So let's find out how we can actually do it. Well, you can think that the failures are outcomes of faults. So then we could prevent failures by limiting all the faults, right? That seems to make sense, right? But unfortunately, that is not realistic. The truth is that the technical and economical reasons makes it impossible to prevent all failures. Say, for example, down to earth, we cannot build a hard drive that lasts forever, or maybe we can't have a reliable network that lasts all the time. Or in simple terms, I can say that we cannot build a software or an application that is entirely bug free, right? So we must approach this from a different angle. So we must acknowledge that everything may fail and will definitely fail. So let's go that way. And we must focus not on preventing them, but preventing them from escalating to a system wide failure. So unfortunately, we cannot build availability into our system, because availability is a derived property, and that is something which we cannot directly control. Uh, Fortunately, there are other properties that we can control with, say, for example, the decisions on how to implement or how to design a system. So one of those properties is fault tolerance. So, and key to obtain fault tolerance is through stability. The systems can be actually classified into stable systems and unstable systems. So these stable systems resist, small deviations, but tends to return to its initial state very easily. On the other hand, unstable system can permanently pushed out of its normal state, even with a small deviation. So that is stable system, and that is unstable system. So before proceeding, let me introduce you these two terms, this high availability and fault tolerance. So in the world of computing, high availability and fault tolerance are given a lot of importance. So one of the major factors, I would say, of moving majority of our workload to cloud is because of the inbuilt fault tolerance and high availability features these cloud service providers are actually providing, be it AWS, GCP. So that is one of the main reasons. So, but both seems same, right? In the high availability system, you would actually expect that the system is always available and your application would never go down. Same is the case of fault tolerance. If your system goes down, it should come up automatically. So, what is the difference between two? Actually, there is a very thin line between the high availability and fault tolerance systems. Both of them provide the same functionality with a little bit of difference. So I just want to make clear what is that thin line. This is an example of explaining both systems, a very simple example as I could find out. Consider a twin engine airplane is a fault tolerant system. So if one engine fails, the other one kicks in automatically and allowing the plane to continue flying. Conversely, a car with a spare tire is a high availability system. High available is high available. So a flat tire will cause a car to stop, but downtime is very minimal because the tires can be easily replaced. As you can see, in high availability system, they might have a very minor or little amount of downtime. So that is exactly what a thin line I was mentioning. In high availability system, it can have a little amount of downtime. But the fault tolerance system comes into picture when you do not need any downtime at all, not even for a couple of systems. So before proceeding, you need to understand these two terms perfectly. So let's proceed. In this talk, I'm going to talk a few techniques that you can actually apply to build a fault tolerant system. So using these techniques, if you work with the cloud services you're already working, you can make them more fault tolerant. So these are the main five techniques or factors, that is contain, fail fast, escape, adjust, and learn. So let's quickly go through one by one. So the first one is, for the first and the basic of this is to contain the fault. The idea is very simple. Introduce physical and logical barriers to reduce the blast of your fault. If you look around, in real life, there are a few examples like fireproof doors. They will prevent the fire from propagating, or at least they will slow down the propagation so that it gives more people more time to save lives. So in computing, containment applied to both hardware and software. Say data centers, for example, they have multiple networks for different classes of network. There is a network for production traffic. There's a network for backups. So these days, on any cloud services that works in multiple computing nodes, a load balancer always sit in front of these clustered and distributes the traffic among the nodes. This load balancer can also monitor the health of the nodes. As I said, there could be multiple computing nodes, so it can actually monitor the health of the nodes, and it can restart or replace any faulty nodes. And in that way, if one of your server goes down, only that server will be affected, and but the service will continue to provide. So that is one technique. And containment also applies to logical resources inside our application layer. So that was kind of something of hardware. This is coming to the software side. So for example, many application uses a thread pool to manage concurrency, right? So if your application has a single thread pool, and if one part of the application is becomes lower, the threads will inevitably be concentrating over there only. So instead, have multiple thread pools for different kind of tasks. I would say consider having separate connection pools for each dependency. The downside of this would be, that might reduce the efficiency of the services, but remember, in exchange, it increases its robustness. So that is something we can make advantage of. The next one is the choice of communication mode. So this choice of communication mode also affects your fault tolerance. There is this asynchronous communication mode and synchronous communication mode. So synchronous communication mode, it requires both a sender and receiver to be available at the same time. So if the receiver is not available, the message cannot be delivered, and the fault will immediately propagate from the receiver to sender. Let's find out how it works in asynchronous communication mode. So, asynchronous communication, it decouples the availability of sender and receiver, and you don't have these sender and receiver to be available all the time. And whenever the receiver is not available, the messages which we are supposed to send to the receiver is automatically put into a backlog of messages or queued messages. So whenever the receiver recovers, it can catch up the messages from the backlog of queued messages. So there are a few technologies to implement this queue mechanism, like RabbitMQ, SQS. There are a few technologies to implement this. So remember, how to contain the fault, invest in redundancy. I would say even the space shuttle, when they used to fly, they have 5 expensive redundant computers. So with a fraction of that cost, you may have multiple computing nodes sitting behind the load balancer. So that was the first technique. Let's find out the second one. That is the fail fast. So that is fail fast. A quick error is always better than a slow response. That may sound a bit confusing, right? A quick error is better than a slow response. So if some part of the application is being slow, wouldn't it be better to give more time rather than giving up, right? You all will think like that. It would be better if we give more time rather than just giving up. But in practice, these errors and slowness are actually correlated. So if something is taking longer than usual, chances are very high that it may fail anyway. So waiting will be in vain. But more importantly, waiting is one of the worst things we can do, because it reduces our options. Instead, if something fails fast, we may have options at our disposal, like aborting or retrying, or maybe activating an alternate path. So even when some part of the system fails, system as a whole will be able to deliver some value, but only if it reacts quickly. So failing fast also frees resources, valuable resources like threads and connections. So there are multiple techniques to do this. How to fail fast? Let's find out one by one. The first one is validate early. That's early validation. Say, for example, it is pointless to start processing a transaction. First we will be acquiring the necessary connection with the database, only to find out that the transaction we are actually trying to achieve cannot be complete due to some minor errors. So do not leave the validation to database side. Push it always outside to the API of a service. So that is one technique. The next one is reject politely. So look for opportunities to turn back requests without doing much work. So if you are writing a service, you should return a 400 request status code back for an invalid request. That is common, right? We all do this. But we can go one step further. What is that? You could think of reacting not only to invalid requests but for valid requests only when the system is under stress. So that is one technique. Your service could detect this. How to detect this? You can actually go and measure the length of its queues, or maybe by the usage of pools. So in that case, you could immediately reject the additional traffic, the incoming additional traffic. So in this case, if you are rejecting it, we cannot reject it with a 400 status code, but because that is not an appropriate status code. Here, you can use this 503 status code, that is service unavailable. In that way, you are telling very politely to your REST clients that please come back later. The system is not available now. So that's one technique. The next one is never wait too long. In my experience, a lack of strict timeouts is a main contributor of cascading failures. The general rule is very simple. Any operation that is slow or blocking must have a timeout. So that is the very simple rule. And the timeouts, always remember, the shorter, the better. Never, never, never wait indefinitely. So setting timeouts is probably, the simplest way. We have to make our system fault tolerant. So while we are actually coding, every line of code we write, we should think that, oh, yeah, this is going to be, whether it's going to be a potentially slow operation. So keep that in mind and make sure that we set up a timeout to run that. So to summarize, how to fail fast, quick error is often preferable over a slow response. Look for opportunities to turn back request before doing much work. And then do not hesitate to refuse service when in trouble. Most importantly, remember to set timeouts around anything that may take longer than an instant. All right, got it? Okay, so let's find out the next technique, that is escape. It is simple as this: stay away from trouble. Stay away from the trouble. So let's borrow the idea from circuit breakers. We all have these circuit breakers in your home, right? The circuit breakers with two positions, open and close, and normally they are actually in the closed position, and that means that they are connecting the wiring of your home to the grid. And whenever there is an overload, they automatically switch to the open positions, just to protect the rest of the component from the overload. So borrow the same idea. You need to apply this specifically in the integration points like REST APIs. So imagine we have a client and a server, and we installed a circuit breaker in between this client and server. So all the requests will flow from the client to server just like normal. The circuit breaker will be sitting in there simply, monitoring the request from client and server. Whenever there's an overload, the circuit breaker will switch to the open position. How will the circuit breaker will detect it? There will be some default or configurable threshold value. So whenever this ratio exceeds, it will immediately switch to open position. So when in open position, it will immediately interrupt and make all the requests fail from the client to server. So that has the benefit for both client and servers. The circuit breaker patterns, this is the circuit breaker pattern. So these circuit breaker patterns are always readily available in all the cloud platforms like AWS, GCP. You just have to go there, study it, and you have to implement the circuit breaker patterns while we are architecting your services. And the next one is, there are several open source fault tolerance libraries. The most popular one I would say is Hystrix by Netflix, to set up the timeouts. And you should actually configure fallbacks behavior. So instead of just following the request, you can just return the cache value, or maybe the fault value, or maybe you can actually activate an alternate path. So just set out the fallbacks. Another property is monitoring and alerting. Have a web dashboard, have these monitoring and alerting already set up. We'll come to it later. The next technique would be to adjust. So anywhere an interaction takes place, the parties should communicate their expectations. I would say both the parties should keep each other updated about their status. An example is TCP protocol. So when two internal hosts wants to open a connection, they follow a three-way handshake protocol. So that is how TCP protocol works, which allow them to agree that, okay, they are ready to exchange information. And then once this is done, they will be actually dynamically negotiating a TCP window, which is the number of packets they can be flight at any given moment. So if the receiver is actually congested, it will reduce the size of the window. So that is how the TCP protocol works. So we can apply this idea not only to network protocols, but also to our application layer. So there are a few techniques for this. First one is page size. So set the limit for fetching the database results. Set the page name boundary. So unexpectedly large data is a threat for both the application and the database. Another powerful technique is actually streaming of those responses. Like streaming can be used with both databases and with the REST API. It actually optimizes both memory consumption and latency. So the next one is growth. As our application grow, they tend to accumulate resources. What does accumulating resource means? Accumulating resources like resource base or maybe memory. So sometimes accumulation is part of a normal operation, like populating caches, or maybe keeping the log files, or it could be audit trials. In those cases, it is our responsibility to design mechanisms to keep the size of things under control. An alternate way could be evicting caches or rotating log files. So in some cases, these accumulation of resources are unintended, like a memory leak in a hash map, or it could be a result of a bug. So whatever the reason it is, make sure you always set limits to any data sets that may grow. This point you have to keep always in mind. The other is the flow control. The flow control allows the parties to dynamically adjust the speed of the communication to their current needs. The REST services, for example, can push back to the client by rate limiting or request locking. So if you have a producer and consumer, they work at different needs, you can smoothly difference by adding a buffer. But make sure that the buffer has limited size. So the last one is retries. Again, the idea is very simple. Insist a few times before giving up. However, it's entirely difficult to implement retries correctly. Trust me. So unfortunately, poor implementation of retries, is going to decrease the stability of your system instead of increasing it. So, firstly, there is one trick here. Firstly, it's not okay to retry every possible error. Remember, it's not okay to retry every possible error. Let's say that there are two types of errors. One is transient errors and permanent errors. It's okay if you are actually retrying the transient errors. Say you can reply it back with 400 or 500 family of status codes, but it is never okay to retry a permanent error. It's actually pointless to retry after a permanent error. And another point is retrying an error until the operation succeeds is a recipe for a disaster. So instead, a callback should be set. So it gives the system, chances to recover. The final technique would be to learn. So no matter how well your system is designed, it's ultimate. So what's the ultimate benchmark? Obviously, the ultimate benchmark is going to be how well it is, going to perform in production. That is how we are going to analyze how our system is fault tolerant. So once you have deployed your service to production, you must collect. That is very important. You must collect the matrices about its behavior to understand, how actually your system is doing, how many transactions it is processing, what is the response time, or what is the health of the nodes, or how many nodes are still healthy in the cluster. And the most important metrics is that you must calculate the availability and reliability of your service. So get that information displayed in your dashboard, analyze the strength and anomalies, and set up alerts. So that is the first one, observe. The next one is test. I know, you may be already convinced that need to make your service more fault tolerant. So I guess you are already convinced, right? Okay. So, but how do you test indeed your system is fault tolerant? Obviously, one option is to you can that's seek the ideally, and you could deploy your production and sit ideally and just wait for the next outage of your cloud provider and to see and discover actually, if you have done your homework perfectly. But there is a smarter way. There's a smarter way to test, to continuously introduce, bends into your environment. This is known as chaos engineering. One prominent tool in this area are Chaos Monkey, which randomly destroys the nodes in your cluster so that you can actually test that your system is fault tolerant. You don't have to wait till something is going wrong in the production. And finally, learn in any case, despite of all your efforts, things will always, inevitably will fail in production. In that case, we can see each incident as an opportunity to learn. That is the greatest tip. See each incident as an opportunity to learn. That's going to be my final slide. That's right, life starts after releasing version 1.0. The reality of most of the software or most of the application is the life happens after the initial release. Trust me, that is the truth. So we must prepare and invest for the long term. I would say the main takeaways from this talk would be, first one is we cannot prevent all failures, no matter how long the probability of an event is. If it's not zero, it will eventually happen. So instead, focus on preventing those faults from escalating into a disaster. So that's going to be the takeaways. So when you run a system in production, your quality of life after the release 1.0 directly depends upon the robustness and stability of your system you just built. So build these properties of your system and you will be able to enjoy the movie you are watching without any interruptions. So thank you so much. I hope you have enjoyed the session and you have got your takeaways. Any questions, please drop in the chat box. We'll get back to you soon. Thanks again. Thank you so much.